Here, with the other sinners at the lowest point of the lowest hell, Rianovsky was endlessly floating up and sinking down in the river of sins. Wherever he looked, there was only pitch darkness, and when a faint shape did pierce the shadows, it was the glint of a needle on the horrible mountain of guilt, which only heightened his sense of doom. All was silent, and when a faint sound did break the silence, it was only the feeble sigh of a fellow sinner. As you can imagine, those who had fallen this far had been so worn down by their tortures in the 7 other hells that they no longer had the strength to cry out. Great writer though he once had been, now Rianovsky could only thrash about like a dying frog as he choked on his sins. And then, children, what do you think happened next? Yes, indeed. Raising his head, Rianovsky chanced to look up towards the sky above the river of sins, and saw the gleaming silver spider thread, so slender and so delicate, slipping stealthily down through the silent darkness from the high, high heavens, coming straight for him. Rianovsky clapped his hands in joy. If only he could take hold of this thread and climb up, then perhaps he could escape from hell, and maybe, with luck, could even enter paradise. Then he would never again be driven up the mountain of guilt or plunged down into the river of sins. No sooner had the thought crossed his mind than Rianovsky grasped the spider thread and started climbing with all his might, higher and higher, hand over hand, climbing and climbing. Hell and heaven, though, are thousands of leagues apart, so it was not easy for Rianovsky to escape. He soon began to tire, until he could not raise his arm for even one more pull. He had no choice but to stop, to rest. And as he clung to the spider thread, he looked down, far, far down below. Now Rianovsky realized that all his climbing had been worth the effort. The river of sins was hidden in the depths of the darkness, and even the dull glint of the terrifying mountain of guilt was far down beneath his feet. At this rate, it might be easier than he had imagined to climb his way out of hell. Twining his hands in the spider thread, Rianovsky laughed aloud. "I've almost done it! I'm almost saved!" But then, what do you think he saw? Far down, on the spider thread, his selves, his legion of selves, son and father, husband and friend, lover and writer, man of the East and man of the West, had followed after him. His selves, his characters too. Yoshihide, Yasukichi, Tok, and all the rest, his many creations, and, of course, his sins, his countless, countless sins, his pride, his greed, his lust, his anger, his gluttony, his envy, and his sloth. All had followed after him, clambering up the thread with all their might, like a column of ants. This slim thread seemed likely to snap from his weight alone. How could it possibly hold so many of his selves, his characters, and his sins? And if the fragile thread were to break midway, then Rianovsky would plunge back down into the hell he had struggled so mightily to escape. Yet from the pitch-dark river of sins, still the unbroken column of his selves, his characters, and his sins came squirming up the gleaming silver thread in their hundreds, in their thousands, and Rianosky knew he would have to do something now, or the thread would break in two. Rianosky raised his head again, looking up the spider thread. He was so close to paradise, so very near. He could see the light of the water. He could glimpse the face of Jesus, even hear his weeping, now feel his tears wet upon his own face. But no matter how hard he tried to pull himself up, no matter how far and fast he climbed, Rianosky knew his selves, his characters and sins would always follow after him, always catch up with him. Rianosky let go of the spider thread. And at that very instant, at that very moment, as Rianosky fell back down into the darkest depths, the spider thread broke at the very place where he had been hanging from it. Behind Rianosky, all that remained was the dangling short end of the spider thread from paradise, softly shining in the moonless, starless sky.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.